Eight.
Okay, if everybody's ready, we'll go ahead and call the public property meeting to order so we can stay on track here for our 6 o'clock finance meeting. So we only have one item on the agenda. It's called the Helios Project. And I'm going to let Jansen maybe start, and then we'll turn it over to Larry.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Shields. Late last year, we were approached by Larry Johns from McJack Candy with his interest in installing a immersive space exhibit along the Champion Creek Multipurpose Trail, basically from Spokes Cafe all the way down through Roscoe Ewing and ending at Southport Drive. We met with Larry on site and kind of walked a good portion of the multi-purpose trail to get an understanding of what he was looking to do. He presented some materials at that time, and then I worked with him to guide him on how to prepare for this meeting here. So basically, Larry's going to go through the project, the details of it, and then give us an opportunity to comment on it here at the end. So Larry, if you want to take over.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for letting me speak to you tonight. Go to the first slide, and I'm actually going to go ahead and go to the next slide. So I want to kind of introduce this. This is kind of when people do the trail, this is the final sign that they will see. So I wanted to give you a little background. If you look at that screen, in 1990, Voyager 1 was completing its mission and leaving our solar system after 13 years. Carl Sagan, who most of you probably have heard of, he was a consultant to NASA, and he asked if they could turn it around one final time to take a last picture of Earth. This is the final photo ever taken by Voyager 1 before it left our solar system, and they turned off the camera forever. That blue arrow points to that small dot that you see on your right. Sagan later wrote, "Look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you've ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. Everyone in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. The Earth is the only world known to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known. My vision for the Helios Project is not only to illustrate the wonders and size of our vast universe, but also to help visitors grasp and appreciate what a miracle our planet is and what a blessing it is to be here each and every day, sharing life on our pale blue dot. Next slide. So what is the Helios Project? First of all, it's immersive. In other words, it's an opportunity to show students and hopefully families and everybody what the size and scope of the solar system and the galaxy and the universe, but not just on a cell phone or a YouTube video or something. This is a chance to get out and actually walk in the park, and hopefully by walking this, you'll actually see how far apart certain planets are relative to others and how big or small certain things are relative to others. It's educational. It'll be a way, I think you could get scout groups, school class trips, science classes out to see this throughout the Medina County, maybe even further out area, or for families to bring their children so that they can learn about space and the solar system and then Earth itself, of course, because it keeps coming back to that. It's unique. To my knowledge, nothing like this has been done anywhere in the world. I have seen solar system walks where you can walk some of the planets. It has like that sun, which is 1/1000th scale, by the way. That's not the final one. It's going to be stainless steel and so forth, but it's just an example. Anyway, I've seen the solar system done at a few museums, but to my knowledge, there's nowhere else on Earth where it walks visitors through the solar system, then reduces the scale down to where you can see our galaxy and reduces it down one more time to where you can see the entire universe. So it will be very educational in terms of illustrating the true size of space. And it's thought-provoking. Everyone knows, even if you're not into space, everyone knows that the observable universe, which is 93 billion light years across, is very, very large. But it's really hard to wrap your mind around that, at least it is for me, and I've been working on this for some time. So hopefully it gets people really thinking about our universe and the unique things that are in it. Project benefits encourages new users to enjoy the beauty of the Champion Creek Trail, like I talked about the science classes. I think the sun sculpture garden alone, which is kind of done in miniature over here, I think we have a camera that can catch that. But the sun sculpture garden alone would be a draw for many, including visitors from out of town. You know, people that like to do photos on Instagram and so forth. It's an opportunity for them to come and do that. But hopefully it'll draw them in where they also will see everything else that there is to see in this park. And I think you could even potentially, I'm not saying we would do this right away, but you could build some events around it. I've already talked to people at Nassau Glen where they are willing to come out and do presentations or host events, get guest speakers. You can borrow a moon rock for an exhibit for the day. You actually could build an event around it. Like the asteroid belt on this scale would actually go right through the very center of the Medina Square, for instance. So I think you could even build, like Garfield School lays in the orbit, I think, of the Earth and so forth, or Mars. So you could really show where everything is relative to the square. You could even draw chalk lines at each orbit to make like a theme day around it if we wanted to at some point. And I have a collection of artifacts from Apollo 11 and some meteors and things. We could really build like a pop-up type event once per year for this. It's done in 3 sections. First of all, you have Sun through Pluto, which is a 1/1 billionth scale. That's that 55-inch sun. That's, if you reduce the sun 1 billion times, it would be that size. And then in front of you, when you came in, you could see the Earth and Moon relative to that. Now, the Earth is, in that case, about 13 millimeters, and the Moon is just a couple millimeters. And that's the correct distance between them if you look on that stand. So that's the size that you would see there. Now, of course, they're much too close here. If the Earth was here, or the sun rather was right here, Earth and Moon would be somewhere over kind of by cool beans. So that's how far apart they are. And then they subsequently get much further and further and further apart. The first planets are close together, and then they start to get very far apart. Like Pluto on this scale would be out past on tap, like past the highway and so forth on this scale. We would then go to the Milky Way. That's part 2, where we reduce the total scale to 1/100 trillionth scale. Highlights there would include the Oort cloud and our nearest neighboring stars, and that would be in the middle of Roscoe Ewing Park. Then finally, the universe would be 1/9,000,000th scale. That's 1 with 30 zeros. And that would show some of our galaxy and neighboring galaxies and so forth. And then there'd be a wrap-up slide where we talk about the pale blue dot and so on. If you go to the next slide with the sun. So that is a mock-up. I show a couple other versions of it, but that is where that would land behind Spokes Cafe. It's currently just a grassy area. That would be kind of the highlight of the whole exhibit and the starting point as well. And it wouldn't be that ball that you see over there. It'd be a highly polished stainless steel ball, kind of like the next slide. Those of you that have been to Chicago to see they call it the Beam, but its actual name is Cloudgate. If you've seen the Cloudgate sculpture, it is the #1 attraction in the Midwest as far as tourist attraction, with millions of people going to see it every year. Now, Medina is obviously, this 55-inch one is going to be much smaller, but people are intrigued by anything, these shiny mirror objects, that people would make a point to go to see this. If you go to the next slide, what we would do there, you can see more with some of the landscaping. And I included this quote, got several quotes on this, but I would include that in my cost. I would also show 12 different versions of the sun represented in different cultures over the centuries, just to add some interest to that overall display area. It's like a 20-foot diameter circle. If you go to the next slide, I mocked up at least in Photoshop and Illustrator, what this would look like on a typical planet pedestal. It wouldn't be these music stands like I have with these temporary setups. It'd be granite and stainless steel for each planet. So Jupiter, for instance, that's the biggest one. It'd be like this size on one of these pedestals, all the way down to Pluto, which you probably can't see from there because it's only a few millimeters, but down to this size, all at the 1 billion scale. So each station like this would have a granite display with the name of the planet and then some interesting descriptive information. For instance, if you go to the fun facts, these are just, I pulled these out from different stations. So for instance, this would be, I think it's on the one when you are looking at the Earth. It explains that how far away the moon is, in terms that people might be able to put their arms around that. It would take 143 days if you drove 70 miles per hour day and night with no stops to get to the moon, for instance. If you go to the fun fact 2 there, what's up? The New Horizons spacecraft, which is among our fastest, it's going 20 times the speed of a bullet. And even at that rate, if it was aimed at the nearest star, which it's not, it would take 78,000 years to get there. And these kind of things start to get people, help them wrap their minds around how large the universe is. That third fun fact, Milky Way galaxy, for instance, it has many, many neutron stars, billions of them. A neutron star is so dense that 1 tablespoon would weigh the same as Mount Everest. Another one. So the Milky Way galaxy, all the stars that you can see at night with the naked eye fall in just that little circle. So you can see where our sun is in the Milky Way galaxy. All the stars you see at night are in that circle, and that's it. There's one other galaxy you can see with the naked eye just barely if it's very, very dark, and that's Andromeda. But that's it. People think they're looking at most of the stars. You're only looking at a fraction of a subset of the stars that are actually out in the sky. And each sign would have something like this. It's not just, I tried not to just do boring information like size, location, how bright it is. So, I try to give something that people more can relate to and make it interesting. Go to the galaxy displays in this next one. I've only carved them in wax so far. They still have to be cast. But these would be cast in bronze. And then because the planets are all in stainless steel mirror finish, they would then be plated with nickel so that everything would match throughout. I want a cohesive look for the whole set of exhibits. So this is as you get into part 3. Milky Way, of course, is our galaxy. That's 4 inches across. Andromeda, which is our closest neighbor, is more than twice the size of our galaxy. And Triangulum is our next closest. It's smaller than our galaxy. But there's galaxies out there, and I'll mark this one with posts at one point because it's too big to make it, is more like 25 feet across if you use the same scale. So our galaxy is 4 inches. There's galaxies that are 20 feet out there. Go to the next fun fact. Oh, you got it. Here's a fun fact. When you're talking about the universe and the galaxies in the universe, there's 100 to 200 billion galaxies in our universe. If you could visit each one just for 60 seconds, just for a minute, and then instantly go to the next one and instantly go to the next one, no travel time in between, it would take 300,000 years to go to every galaxy for a minute. And every galaxy has 100 million stars on average. Of course, that varies a lot, but it starts to give you an idea of how many stars are out there and how many potential planets and so on. On the wrap-up, in 93 billion light years of space, it's possible we're all alone, or there could be millions of unique civilizations and life forms just in our galaxy we may never know. But each of us are contributing to the story of our universe in our own way. And as Carl Sagan said, we are all made of star stuff. What he meant is, since the very beginning, like Big Bang and all the matter was created, that's been recycled into all the atoms and molecules that make up your body. So at one point, we all started out as star stuff. The Helios Project will give each visitor the opportunity to consider his or her unique place on the pale blue dot in the universe and appreciate what our world has to offer and what a miracle and privilege it is to be here on this planet at this point in history. Next slide is the local suppliers, contractors. I've already spoken with all of these lampiers, and I've also got several other quotes on the landscaping. Standard Welding, Chippewa Stone, Medina Signs, Studio Foundry in Cleveland would do those castings of the galaxies. Trail guides, mock-up signage that you saw in front of you tonight, and those trail guides I gave you are from Minuteman Press, and then I've got some folks at McJack that will help with some of the assembly. Next slide is the cost. So I'm not really here to ask for much money. This is, my wife and I would pay for this, but I am asking if Medina would help install the pedestal bases. So our part, give or take a few thousand, is around 65,000-ish. Landscaping is the most expensive, and then of course getting a 55-inch diameter stainless steel sun with mirror finishes, that's quite expensive. But that's what we're looking at for cost, but again, I'm not asking the city for any of that money. What I am requesting on the last slide from Medina, if you could help with the installation of the pedestal mounts for these granite and stainless steel pedestals. The sign company would actually put the signs in, so you wouldn't need to do that. Whatever zoning approvals are needed, I'm not as versed on what we have to do there. I'd like to retain the creative control of the project, and if Medina could do the cleaning of the sun and replanting the flower beds, and I can get more information on cleaning. I think the bean sculpture in Chicago is done like twice a year. And then some security lighting and cameras for the sun to prevent vandalism. So that's it in a nutshell. I kind of skimmed through it. There's a lot, especially if we start reading all the signs, but I think it'd be very unique, and I'm quite excited about it, and I think it'd be really an interesting opportunity for families, school, kids, really anybody to learn more about our universe, and then at the end, bring it all back to how unique Earth itself is when you start looking at the rest of the universe. So I'm opening up for questions.
Thank you, Larry. I'll start, and I was fortunate enough with Jansen and the mayor. You took us through it, and we walked the trail, and you had it set up, which it really helped, and it was very unique. And I really appreciate that you came up with this idea and you want to share it with everybody here in the community. It's very generous of you. Couple questions. I walked the trail this weekend again, and one of the things that I noticed, vandalism. I know we talked a little bit about it that day, and there's some spray paint in a couple spots on the trail already here, and it's the unfortunate side of things. And I know we talked about the sun, that we thought we could put a video camera there and monitor that. I'm just concerned about all the other stops along the way if there is vandalism. How many signposts will there be from start to finish?
I think there's 13 like pedestals with the granite. Then a lot of things like the asteroid belt and so forth that's too small to represent anything. So there's additional signs. I think there's around 20 signs.
Okay.
But as far as, I've already thought about the vandalism thing too. Most of the things, the sun is the big one, the expensive one to replace. Almost everything else, yeah, it'd be a bummer to have to do it, but I could buy new ones if they were damaged like that.
Okay.
And for instance, on those galaxies, the wax galaxies, I'm actually making 2 of each from the get-go. Also on the granite pedestals, I'll probably make a spare from the beginning. While they're making it, it's cheaper to just do one extra. So some things will make extra. I mean, if people damage it as a frequent thing year after year, it would get expensive. But I figure we should be able to have nice things, even if there's vandals. So.
And I agree. It's kind of the reality. It's sadly, I mean, we've dealt with it a few times here, anywhere from the Challenger Baseball League. It's just people do. And, I walk the trail enough to know that sometimes people will spray paint on the bridges and stuff. So I just want to make sure, because I'm trying to think long-term maintenance and upkeep. And I know you talked too about creative control. Will there be a way that at some point we could give the Parks Department like a drive that has all the information for each, like 20 years from now, if somebody needed to replace a sign, that we'd have all the verbiage, and so that so long after all of us are not here, that we can make sure somebody's always able to update it. And
Yeah. And it's also because it's Medina Sign making them, they would have all the original files. But yeah, I would do that. In fact, before we actually did all the mounting, I've got all of I'm just still editing a few, but I pretty much have all the signs done as far as the verbiage. So that way, if anyone wanted to see ahead of time before we start posting them around, what they actually say, everyone would have an opportunity to do that.
Okay. I appreciate that. And I will say from the very first time you took us and showed us this, and I've talked to a lot of teachers, they're very excited about it. And we do the Medina Walk every year, and they were thinking already how they could incorporate this into when the kids come up to the square and visit different places. And
Yeah, I've even thought about, I don't know if there's too much light pollution from the city to do it here, but I've also got a pretty powerful telescope, and you could even build in something where you could do an evening where, you can see Jupiter and 4 of its moons with this telescope, and the rings of Saturn, and Andromeda, and so forth. So you could even build something like that if you had a group where it went into the evening, some other events around that.
Jared, can you put up the slide again with what the city is required or what being asked of the city too? Because I was thinking the one about the flower beds, I know we have a group from Sydney Fen, they go over and plant flowers every year at Jump Park. I was thinking maybe we could incorporate a way where one of the service clubs from one of the schools could be responsible for flowers.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're always looking for service projects, and it's really worked out well with our Jump Park project each year with flowers. So
Okay.
made me start thinking about that. Maybe this could be adopted by one of the service clubs from one of the schools.
Yeah. Yeah, good idea.
Questions, Mr. Lamb or Mr. Simpson?
Go ahead, Bill.
Is this on? I don't really have a question, particularly, but I think it's fascinating. This whole thing is fascinating to me.
Right.
Partly because I taught school at Ella Canavan, and one of the things that's one of the things that was most difficult to actually explain was when you look at the picture that shows the galaxy, it shows the solar system. Everything looks like it's all on the same level, and it's pretty compact. And then if you try to walk it out, just take one planet to the next planet, like take two kids outside and walk them out, it's a really big distance.
Mm-hmm.
And as well as the size, hard to explain intellectually, but to actually lay it out
Right.
is one of the only ways you can really get kids or whoever to understand these differences in the distances rather are huge. Mm-hmm. And the size of the sun is comparatively so big, but all the drawings and all the posters never really get that. You don't get that point across.
Yeah, they scrunch them together.
Yeah,
for room.
yeah, it's always
Yeah.
scrunched across. And then the whole galaxy thing is just completely lost because you're just our galaxy, and it's a thing full of stars, and we know what some of the star formations are, and that's about it. We never really
Right.
get beyond that thing. And one of the things I like most about the concept that you've got, other than the size of it, the placement, putting it in the park, is the idea not to just have some boring specific fact, but the way to relate things, like if you're in an automobile driving this many miles an hour, it take you this long to get there, because because we know how long it takes to go 70 miles an hour in a car, how long that trip is if you go 8 hours. Mm-hmm. And so if you spread it out and say, this is how long it would take to go from here to here, that sort of speaks to that distance.
Right.
Right? I mean, that's got to be so much fun, as well as be educational. The vandalism part, I completely understand, and I guess the thing I would hope we could do would be to do whatever we could do to try to limit that, which in some ways is really hard to do because that's why it's called vandalism, but not do a project because of because we're afraid of the negative side, the vandalism, to just do the project and then work and hope and for the best.
There's two places where we could also, if we were really concerned about it, I could put in the budget a couple trail cams that don't need, that are battery or solar operated. There's one area when you get to Saturn, because it's not practical to put like Neptune and so forth and Pluto all the way out past the highway, like that far out, it'll say that Neptune would actually be a mile this way and so forth. So there's a little cluster of things in one spot that you could cover with one trail cam. And then Jupiter is kind of off by itself and is a little bit more expensive than some of the little ones. There could be a trail cam there. So if it was a problem, like there's like two key positions that maybe we would want trail cams. But we could wait and see if that's necessary. But they're not that expensive, and they work, with cell phone technology, so that when there's motion or it catches video or still images when people go near something within a certain time frame. So
Yeah,
that's a
I like that idea. I mean, I like the idea of trying to deal with it rather than not, not do it because we're afraid of that. Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. Great presentation. Thanks.
Mr. Simpson?
Larry, I just want to thank you and Francine for the dedication towards this project. It seems, it's going to put Medina on the headline for another reason. We've got many, but this sounds so exciting. And I was always a big Carl Sagan fan, especially when he was on Johnny Carson show. Sounds pretty crazy, but I always learned so much just in that few-minute segment. So, I think this is great. I think we can deal with the vandalism concerns that has been brought up here. I like the idea of having the sun at the very beginning at Spokes Cafe. So, and I think that should help also with hopefully there'll be less vandalism to that area. You never know. But as Bill said, that shouldn't be our main concern. It just seems like such a cool project, and for education, hats off to you.
Thank you.
I support this 100%. Thank you and Francine.
Thanks.
Mr. Worley, I wanted to give you a chance too, because I know I don't want to, we always try to make sure we're not giving you too much, or where we start and it gets bigger and bigger and you've got limited number of personnel to deal with things. But do you feel comfortable with taking this on? And
Thank you. So, obviously, the project is very unique. It's engaging, and I totally understand the value of it and the benefit that the kids and the community would have from going through an experience like this. I do have some concerns, though, and we've talked about some of these. You guys have hit on a few of them. Vandalism being number one. We regularly have vandalism in that area on our park signs on the Miracle League field. And with this being immersive and along the entire multi-purpose trail, there's a lot of area that would not be able to be closely monitored. We're looking at approximately 38 signs. And I think we're just going to have to develop a plan for how to replace those and how to address cleaning those, because the problem with spray paint, you get spray paint on one of those signs, and any product that you use to remove graffiti will also take off the coating on the sign. It's nearly impossible, even with a little slash of spray paint, to reuse what's there. So I do have some concerns with, that happening for the long term as to how it could be sustainable, because as soon as a sign's missing, they're more than likely going to call our office and want to know what the plan is to replace it. So I think we've kind of addressed that by trying to get, electronic files so that we can get signs remade. There's a value to having it, but it also comes at a cost. And I greatly appreciate the offer to fund a vast majority of the project. I'm just thinking after it's in, because a lot of times these things, go unnoticed. There is a ask in here for security cameras and lighting. I'll have some work to do on that. We don't have electricity at the area where the sun is going. We do have a lease with Peaceworks at 406 South Broadway, so we'll have to look at the lease and see if we can maybe use electricity to put a light in. For a security camera, we're going to need internet access. We'll have the ongoing monthly fees, plus the license fee for the computer that's there to run that, in order to get that video back to dispatch. So we're probably looking, just off the top of my head, probably in the neighborhood of $9,000 to make that work. Just based on recent numbers for security systems that we have put in at other parks. So there's some things to work through there. I'm not saying it can't be done. But just wanted, you'd hear my side of it as well. Again, I see a huge benefit for the project.
Larry, did you have a comment? It looked like you wanted to, did you want to add something there? Or? I'm going to give a chance for other council members to ask a question too, but
Yeah, no, I understand it, and I think I'm concerned about it too. But in the overall scheme of things, other than the sun, most of the things are more in the neighborhood of a few $100s. So the sun's the expensive thing to replace. So that's probably the most important as far as security and vandalism.
and I appreciate, I know you were willing to fund this upfront, and when we talked about you setting up a 501c3, and I think you've got that done now.
Yes, that's done, yes.
And I know the mayor and I have talked to at least one foundation that we're both part of, and there's some interest there, I think, and I think we're willing to talk to some other foundations too to maybe help, and maybe we can set up some kind of fund as well for some of the replacement going forward.
Mhm. Okay,
So,
great.
Mr. Patton?
I just had a quick question. Those 13 pedestals, do they require a foundation or anything?
Actually, Jansen had some, Mr. Early had some ideas for the best way to mount that. As far as how it goes under the dirt, I was picturing like a concrete pad, but he had some other ideas that might actually be better so they don't start to list over time. So I think we would do that, but it's gonna be almost, well, it's actually the same as it used for countertops, but in fact, it's called Galaxy Pattern, coincidentally. But it'd be a flat, then a stainless kind of like shelf that holds at a stainless 4x4-inch post that flares out to a flange that then goes to a wider granite base, and then we'd have to see which way is best to secure that to the ground.
How about questions from other council members? Mr. Coyne?
Thank you. I think, I think this is an idea that a lot of the schools would love this, and I think other people, to get a feeling for what the galaxy is and what we live in and how big and a distance between the planets there really exists. I think the construction of it, though, I think what may be more beneficial in my mind, instead of having the Parks Department, do it, is, get the Boy Scouts or some other club where they can learn why they put this together. And it could be an Eagle Scout project, because I think this is something they would understand because they went through it in school. So I don't know if that could be some way tied in with some type of projects that some of these other groups can do, the youth groups or whatever, and maybe we're involved in a little bit, but I think that would be more educational for them to be involved in putting it together, because then they would learn more and just having it exist. I know that the issues, and maybe from the ongoing maintenance of it, some of those groups want to get involved because it's going to be very important to them, not only the community, but maybe to a specific group, that take the responsibility on and making sure every so often if there's a large member of the group just to keep an eye on the solar system, so to speak, and make it work. But I think you should get involved different groups, and I don't know if it's more beneficial in my mind to get the community involved to put this together rather than just the Parks Department to put it together, because it's a learning experience in all aspects.
I actually have an idea for that scout group. One thing that we have to do yet is kind of nail down, I only used my phone so far to get the GPS coordinates, like where each sign would go, but I want to do it a little more precisely by maybe a surveying company helping. If a scout group were to work with a surveying company to actually get the exact locations, that would be a good project.
We also have GPS available that we could nail that down to within like half an inch or so.
Oh, yeah, my phone ends up being like 20 feet depending on which day I do it, so that'd be better.
I wanted to give Ms. Hare a chance too, because this is actually Roscoe Young Trails in her ward, so.
I'm sorry to get to the dance late today, but from what I've heard, I think it's a great opportunity to bring more people to the city of Medina and experience our park systems, which I think are outstanding as they are. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this point from anyone?
I'm going to throw out one more fun fact for you. This is a kind of thing that we could do if we had a school group tour. I've been thinking about other ways to illustrate this. If you reduce the sun down to the size of a grapefruit, the next closest star would be the size of a grape, and it would be down in Venezuela, as far as distance between.
It is, just the mock-ups you had that day, I was, all my elementary school, including my elementary teacher who's over here, it was all coming back to me, but just so interesting, and it was a great way, once you saw it spatially. A great way to do it, so we really appreciate it. It's a great project and very, very kind and generous of you to spearhead this and cover everything, for the most part. It's just, what a great gift, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
So my question is there gonna, we know the donation on Jansen's side, I mean, what do we have to do to figure out?
Well, that's
the
what I was
on-
wondering, if we could move it out of public properties, and then by the time we bring it to finance, we'd have some more numbers worked out, and I think we didn't want to get too far, like when we talked to one of the foundations, we were kind of waiting to get through today to make sure all the council and the city felt good about moving forward, and then we can also start looking at some other funding sources as well for some of that.
No, I think that the biggest concern is mentioned is vandalism, because it'll be attractive, and that's part of the problem. Because everybody's gonna want.
It is sad. I know, that trail is very well used, and there's a lot of traffic on it, but I'm always amazed that, I'm usually there at least once a week, and I see something new that should not have been done on the trail, so.
I make a motion to move this out of this committee over to Finance Committee.
Motion.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Well, thank you again for presenting and for all these mock-ups. That's really helped too. It was
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
very impressive. Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else, that was the only item, so we are adjourned.